But it's not just the EU that's been criticised. The US, much loved in the region and a key investor and facilitator, has also been accused of being unfair in its response to Kosovo, while Serbia remains somewhat unscathed. I spoke with Richie Torres, Congressman for the Bronx in New York, and someone who has spoken loudly in support of Kosovo. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today. Now, as you mentioned earlier this week, Kosovo has emerged as one of the most democratic countries in the Western Balkans, and it's made huge progress since its independence. Meanwhile, Serbia, although it's an EU candidate country, has experienced democratic backsliding in almost all areas, and it's also refused to align with EU and US foreign policy on Russia. Yet, we're seeing what appears to be the burden of resolving the current crisis being placed on Kosovo. Why is this?
I wish I knew the answer to your question. Kosovo is becoming more democratic, not less, whereas Serbia is becoming more autocratic, not less. Kosovo is unwaveringly allied with the West, whereas Serbia is essentially a satellite in the orbit of Russia. Despite these differences, the United States and Europe appear to be taking a one-sided approach that favors Serbia and disfavors Kosovo. Why on earth would the United States denounce Kosovo for seating democratically elected mayors, which is an exercise of national sovereignty, without denouncing Serbia for inciting instability in the North? And notice that the European Union has said nothing about the apprehension of the Kosovar police officers at the hands of the Serbian regime. So there's a real perception of a double standard within the Albanian diaspora and among elected officials who are supportive of the Albanian diaspora, such as myself. The silence from the European Union is deafening, and it's inexplicable to me. What is the West going to gain from a policy of appeasing an autocratic Serbia and alienating a democratic Kosovo? Kosovo has been shown to be the strongest democracy in the Western Balkans, according to independent assessments. Kosovo is so democratic that it secured a more than $200 million grant from the US Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is a recognition of the progress that Kosovo has made toward good governance, whereas Serbia is moving in the exact opposite direction. And Serbia is one of the few countries in the Western Balkans that refuses to sanction Vladimir Putin for his illegal invasion of Ukraine.
Do you think a soft stance from the West could help improve the popularity of the US, EU, and NATO in Belgrade and draw it away from Russia? Do you think this is perhaps on the minds of the State Department?
I fear the opposite. I fear we're going to see the worst of both worlds. We're going to gain no goodwill from Serbia while alienating an ally like Kosovo. And we're living in a time where American influence might be on the decline, and we cannot take our allies for granted. We have to be proactive in preserving our alliances. Vladimir Putin, it has been reported, is the most popular figure in Serbia. There's no evidence that the policy of appeasing Serbia is going to elevate the standing of the United States and the EU within Serbia. I'm skeptical about it.
I saw some data.
When I go to Kosovo, there's a deep reservoir of goodwill and loyalty toward the United States. I've jokingly said there's more love for the United States in Kosovo than there is in the United States. And so why on earth would we want to squander that goodwill? I want to see a normalization of relations. The highest priority should be to secure recognition of Kosovo as an independent state and an integration of Kosovo first into the European Union and NATO and ultimately into the international community. That should remain the policy of both Europe and the United States. But I worry that the dialogue has become more of a sword than a shield. Instead of operating as a shield that protects the independence of Kosovo, it has become a sword that Serbia weaponizes against Kosovo. Like basic local decisions, like enforcing license plates, are subject to the dialogue. And so Serbia has managed to weaponize the dialogue process to infringe upon the sovereignty and the independence of Kosovo, which is the opposite of how the dialogue should be operating.
Now, I've spoken to politicians and analysts from many countries, locally and further afield, on this issue, and I'm going to ask you the same question. As the EU has 5 non-recognisers amongst its ranks, do you think it's capable of leading the Kosovo-Serbia dialogue? Do you think the US could be better placed to lead the way?
Well, I'm in favor of the United States playing a stronger role. And I worry that the non-recognizers are part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And those recognizers should do the right thing and recognize the independence of Kosovo. And I find it strange that the point person on foreign affairs for the European Union comes from a country that refuses to recognize Kosovo. And so how if you're a Kosovar, you're skeptical about the neutrality of the dialogue process, knowing that it's being run partly by non-recognizers.
Now, I just want to throw in one last wildcard question. If you had Kurti and Vucic in a room together and you could impress something upon them, what would it be?
I would tell both sides to honor their obligations under the Brussels Agreement and the Ohrid Agreement. But I would be crystal clear to Serbia that we will have zero tolerance for the instability that it's causing in the north. That is a violation of the sovereignty of Kosovo. It is unacceptable, and the West should have zero tolerance for it.
Representative Torres, thank you very much for your time.